Anyway, no, very few results, just terrible. Okay. Now, by the way, this gets back to CPM and CPC and everything else. The Interactive Advertising Bureau has set standards as to what counts as a mobile video impression. And a lot of the impressions are on mobile phones. So 50% of the ad has to be in focus on the browser. And the video has to run for 2 continuous seconds. And if that happens, then that's an impression. Okay. Which is an opportunity to see for mobile video ads. So not much, right, folks? Yeah. All right. So we've talked about video. And now another major part of marketing in the internet is to advertise or involve social networks in your marketing in many possible ways. And here are kind of the big players these days. TikTok, pretty new one. 15 seconds of video. And a lot of people have had a lot of fun with these. And it's growing. The usage is growing quite a bit. There are some concerns about possible data security and other violations or problems with it. So it's got a bit of a controversial air to it, but there you go. This goes back a little bit. I think it's kind of funny, so I looked at it again. Should I include it? Because most of these social media sites are still around. I included it. So Twitter is I'm eating a donut. Facebook, I like donuts. Foursquare, which is, I don't know if it exists anymore. It sort of followed you around the different locations. Instagram, here's a vintage photo of my donut. YouTube, here I am eating a donut. LinkedIn, my skills include eating a donut. Pinterest, here's a donut recipe. So, and there was a Google Plus, one point Google employee who eats donuts. Anyway, social media explained. Let's just focus on the gorilla in the room, which is Facebook, one of the largest sites worldwide in terms of visits and users. Now, I have a pretty good friend of mine who ran a bunch of the advertising verticals, the most popular verticals for advertising on Facebook for a few years. He ran the technology vertical and the entertainment vertical. And when I talked to him about Facebook and how it handled advertisers, here's some of the information he gave me, which is, first of all, 6 million advertising customers use the self-serve platform for Facebook. In other words, no one who works at Facebook ever talks to them or helps them. They just do their own thing through a step-by-step guided setup process, very similar to the Google AdWords setup process. And you go, you start broad. Are you doing branding? You're trying to get sales. What's your objectives? How are you targeting people? What's your budget? I mean, it takes you through a whole process. And I'm not going to do a video on that now, but that's the way it is. And by the way, in the last presidential election, a lot of the Russian actual advertising that ran on Facebook, where they were paying for ads, was done through the self-serve platform. And the way Facebook found that out was that they actually found people who purchased ads on Facebook using rubles, which is the currency of Russia. There are, according to my friend Bob, 800 accounts that were actively managed by salespeople. Okay, so there was like a CRM plan for salespeople to work with these clients to help them be successful and get more business from them, et cetera, and to develop the business. And one example he gave me is that there are 3 full-time Facebook employees, sales employees, who work on the Google account. Okay, says class contributions. Okay, so I'm not going to play the Cambridge Analytica video. I played it, I think, for most of my students pretty early on in the process. They were the company that came in the 2016 presidential election and managed to get their hands on personal data from a lot of Facebook subscribers, and not just the subscribers, but also their friends, and managed to get preferences and, what videos do you like, what books do you like, what groups are you in, so much data on millions of Facebook customers, and claim to be able to therefore prepare targeted messages to influence these Facebook users to vote one way or another. And of course, this was the big scandal that kind of blew up things for Facebook and their privacy policy, and the fact that, yes, they did decide to monetize their website by letting advertisers use the personal information and everything we uploaded into Facebook, use all of that to target ads to us, target messaging to us. That's what Facebook did. That's the sin. That's when they crossed the line. And that's what they offer advertisers. They offer them the most fine-tuned psychographic targeting that any advertiser's ever had. And that's why they're making so much money. And that's what Cambridge Analytica took advantage of for influencing election results, or so they said. So it all comes down to privacy policy, right? And Facebook got all of this data from all of us and never said they wouldn't share it. And they did say early on that they weren't going to sell advertising on the site, but you know what? Once things were moving quickly for Facebook and they had to raise a lot of money and then move towards going public, they had to produce a revenue stream. And they have major costs, major data storage costs and other costs. And so Sheryl Sandberg was brought into the company. She'd been a big player at Google, and she convinced the management there, I think Mark Zuckerberg, to go ahead and use the data that all of us users had given them to target us in return for getting a free Facebook. And in the last few years, this is a New York Times article about privacy policies in Europe versus the U.S. Europe and the EU, I think we'll find, is consumer friendly. In the U.S., the government is more business friendly. So in Europe, you've got the right to be forgotten. You can ask search engines to remove links to unpleasant content about you. Any company that's been hacked has to notify within 3 days of discovering the hack. In the U.S., they can delay notifying anybody, and they do. We see it again and again. Okay, so you do thousands of searches, you have all this stuff. What information do the companies have on you? In Europe, you can ask any company for a modest fee to send you details about what data they have on you, what information is used for. You have to hand it over within a month. And it hasn't always been so smooth. But there's nothing in the U.S. where you can request a company to hand over the data they have on you. There's child protection in Europe, not in the U.S. Okay. So these are some of the differences in European privacy policy versus the U.S. Okay, let me get off this. Okay, Zuckerberg stating that in 2008, and remember Google or Facebook was started in 2004, he did not think that social networks could be monetized like search is monetized. But Sheryl Sandberg came in 2008, and that changed. And here's the kind of targeting you can do on Facebook. 52,000 consumer segments. This is the self-administered step-by-step procedure to set up your program on Facebook without ever talking to anyone, based on objectives and who you want to target and ... And by the way, Facebook was also used in the Brexit vote, the original referendum for Brexit, when the Prime Minister decided, there are a lot of people kvetching, as we say here in New York, about wanting to leave the European Union and Britain. And so the Prime Minister at the time said, well, let's put it to a vote. And so the people who wanted to leave the European Union hired a consultant played by Benedict Cumberbatch with a shaved foreline in this movie, or forehead in this movie. And Facebook was used very actively to influence people to vote to leave the European Union. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and then we're going to talk about content.